Well, that definitely took a little longer than I was originally expecting. But it's finally done. Thank you all so much for your patience. And any comments I got over the last couple of weeks wondering about this video's progress were just so cool to see. Thank you all so much. This video was a hell of a learning experience for me, but I do feel like I can hone this process and make any after this even better. But I'm gonna need your guys' help on some of that. Comment any thought you guys have on this video. Truly, nothing is off limits here. If something works, doesn't work, or needs more work, please let me know. Trust me, I only want to make these better. And I feel like you guys can help me a lot in this. But for now, I'm going to start planning out the next one of these bigger projects. And thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of the video. And as always, guys, good hunting. Hello there, everyone. My name is Azmeross. And lately, I have been given a quest that could turn out to be the most daunting I am ever going to undertake. The guild recently sent me a letter. At first, I thought nothing of it, thought it was just another quest like any other day. But curiosity got the better of me and I eventually did read it. Now, I was surprised by its contents at first, but one thing you should know about me is that above all, I am not one to back down when called upon, so here we are. The guild, in its definition of wisdom, has seen fit to make me your new and official teacher. Or wait, sorry, did they say instructor? Or was it mentor? I'm not really sure. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you all, the specifics don't really matter, but the intention behind it is what does. The number of new recruits looking to become hunters has only been increasing by the day in recent times. Pair that with the seemingly never-ending reports of new monsters being discovered, the guild decided it was high time to change their approach to just a few things. Instead of throwing you all into the field blindly and seeing which of you managed to figure it out for yourselves, it's been decided that a little more preparation would do the world of good. And that is where I come in. My job is pretty simple. On paper, at least. I'm here to teach you all there is to know about the monsters you're going to be sent out to deal with. But most importantly, how to stay alive doing it. I have been lucky enough to call myself a hunter for more than a decade now. And if anything I've learned in that time can help you all on your journeys, then let's not waste any more time, shall we? And I hereby welcome you all to the very first class of the Monster Hunter Academy. Now, let's get a few things settled just before we get started. I am sure plenty of you, if not most, already have at least some experience as a hunter. Maybe you've even got the scars to prove it, and that's no problem at all. But for the sake of keeping these classes simple, I will be acting as though all of you are new recruits needing to learn the basics of being a hunter. With that settled, we can start the lesson for real. As new recruits, the only quests you're going to be assigned for a while will be mainly focused on gathering. Things like herbs, mushrooms, and insects on occasion. It isn't exactly glamorous work by any means, but it keeps the merchants happy and many guild facilities well supplied. These gathering quests will keep you all busy for a couple of weeks, but will also filter out any of you who don't like taking orders, because I know there's a few of you. If you manage to complete enough of these quests while having all of your limbs exactly where they should be, the guild will start to take you just a little bit more seriously. That's right, you finally get to hunt some actual monsters. But don't get too excited just yet. Completing a few quests, gathering herbs and such things is all well and good, don't get me wrong. But now that we know you might actually be serious about becoming a hunter, we need to make sure you can actually point your weapon the right way. There are a few ways of making sure of this at the beginning, such as the training arena. Here you can hone your fundamentals or even experiment with weapons you might not have considered. But one of the better ways is to actually send you out after a monster, as they have a habit of getting out of the way. Don't worry, we're not going to be sending any of you after something that has a chance of leaving you as a pile of ashes and lost dreams on the floor. No. The monsters that you will all be seeing are actually the subject of today's class, in fact. And those are the herbivores. Feel free to ask any hunter you want. These monsters may not seem like much, but they are your first real step to becoming hunters, so keep that in mind throughout. But let's keep things nice and basic for now and answer a very simple but important question. What is a herbivore? The term herbivore refers to an entire group of monsters that mainly feed on plants. Seems pretty vague, I'll admit, but I will elaborate. This class contains a wide range of beasts that come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. But what defines this class is that whether reptilian or mammalian, to be classed as a herbivore, the beast must meet the following criteria established by the guild. Their diet is mainly composed of vegetation, they have dense population counts, and they pose no threat at all to hunters or settlements. This criteria is very important to keep in mind, everybody, because you're going to encounter more than a few monsters that may meet one or even two of these criteria, but if it doesn't check all three, it doesn't count, and trust me when I say this, that matters. What? You don't believe me? Okay, here's a quick example. Let's use the Aptonoth and, the Diablos. Both of these two mainly eat plants found in their local habitats. Both of these two are pretty common to see in their respective territories. But the Aptonoth are harmless and completely non-aggressive towards you in any way. And as for him, let's just say he doesn't like sharing. Alright, getting back on track. For each monster we are going to be studying, I will be covering the following categories for each of them. These are just to break things down and make them more digestible for all of you. The first of which is their physical features. Any typical physical characteristics or notable features you need to know about. Their typical behavior or general temperament. Where you're most likely to find them. How they handle predators or how they hunt depending on the monster. And the final category is what I call the Hunter's Guide. This is where I'm going to go over the notes I have on actually hunting the monsters, such as their notable weak points that you can exploit, and any general information that the previous areas don't cover. So with all of that in mind, I decided that the best place to start this very long journey of ours is at the very beginning. Profound, I know. The monsters we will be discussing today are those from the very first generation's records, just to keep things nice and simple. So I think the safest starting point would be the most recognizable and well-known herbivore of them all, and that is the Aptonoth. I know plenty of you are very new here, but I would be very surprised if you hadn't at least heard of an Aptonoth on your travels. If you've ever wandered the outskirts of most settlements, or even just made a visit to the local merchants, you've likely already seen one of these creatures. They're well known, they're reliable, and they're all over the place. The Aptonoth is one of the most well-known herbivores on record. To such an extent, I don't think anyone would argue with me saying that the Aptonoth is the face of the herbivore class in its entirety. Now, I also imagine more than a few of you are thinking, wow, we're really starting with this guy? Not something just a little bit more exciting? And yes we are. Yeah, I will agree that to many these creatures may seem unremarkable or even dull. But one lesson I aim to teach you all is that no matter how unassuming a monster might be, there is always more to learn from them if you're willing to look for it. And the Aptonoth is no exception to this rule, so let's get started. When fully grown, an Aptonoth can stand at around 3 meters tall, reach 8 meters in length, and weigh between 4 or 5 tons. Their bodies are covered in a thick, scaly hide. This hide is quite leathery in parts, making it very tough to slice through. It offers decent resistance against physical trauma, but it's better at helping them withstand changes in temperature. Being a hunter will take you to many places, both well-known and completely new. And depending on the region you're currently stationed in, you may notice some differences in the Aptonoth's appearance. Mainly, there's a notable difference in the coloration of the scales covering their bodies. What causes this is still unclear, but what is clear is those black vertical stripes going along their backs is constant across every specimen. They are primarily quadrupedal animals and so spend most of their time on all fours, but they are capable of rearing up on their hind legs to reach high-growing vegetation. They do this very sparingly, as due to their weight it puts a lot of strain on their legs, and I will warn you all not to stand too close when they're coming back down. It's never really graceful. Being herbivores, they have developed excellent tools to tackle such food sources. They have a short, rounded snout that is finely tuned for rooting around low-growing grasses and sniffing out what they're after. Once they locate their food, their beaks can shear the nutritious leaves and fruits right off the stem. Their teeth are also designed to grind down and mulch even the toughest fruits and mushrooms. Despite being labeled as herbivores, they do have a means of defending themselves, and it's that long tail at the end of their bodies, which I'm sure more than a few of you have already spotted. This tail is built of tightly packed vertebrae, making it very rigid, and on top of that is a thick layer of muscle, only adding to its density. At the tip of the tail are 3 sets of pointed thagomizers, which turn this into a makeshift spiked club, which they will swing around when they feel threatened. So far we've covered mainly surface level details. These kind of things you can tell by just simply looking at them. So now we're going to start delving into the finer details, such as how to tell the difference between a male and female Aptonoth. The first giveaway is in their size. Male Aptonoth will always grow much taller and bulkier than the females by a pretty decent margin. The real tell, though, is in their head crests. Here's a quick side-by-side to show what I mean. The crest of a male Aptonoth is much darker in color than the females, as well as being much more pronounced with 4 pointed spines at the top that form a crown-like shape. The crest of a female Aptonoth is much lighter in color and bears only 2 rounded points at the top in contrast to this. It's accepted by many that these crests are used as a way to signify sexual maturity to the females and assert dominance over any rival males in the mating seasons. Now that we've covered what they look like, the next question is, where can I find them? And the short answer is, damn near anywhere. The Aptonoth are among the most widely spread species documented by the Guild. They can be found roaming close to dense forests, grazing in open grasslands, plodding along riverbanks, or even passing through coastal swamplands. In most regions, with some notable exceptions such as Camara and Elgato, you won't go long without seeing any of them. But despite their widespread reach, the types of territories they choose to settle in are not unlimited. Here's what I mean. While they are very sturdy creatures, they have not adapted to life in harsher climates for long. They can tolerate snowy regions when migrating, but they won't settle in these kinds of places. To thrive as a species, the Aptonoth need temperate regions that are rich in plant life that they can consume. Here's a quick rule of thumb you can write down in your journals. If an area has an abundance of vegetation and just a lot of green, that's where you're going to find them. Now when it comes to their behavior, the Aptonoth are about as gentle and docile as they come. They have no fear towards humans at all, and so you can walk right up to them and they'll just continue grazing. You can even jump up on their backs with no consequence. Yeah, they won't be happy at first and stomp around a little bit, but once they realize you're not trying to hurt them, they'll just continue what they were doing before. With such an easygoing nature, it's no surprise that they have been domesticated for a variety of purposes. The most common place that you will see them is alongside merchants. They can be trained to haul their carts and merchandise in exchange for food, and as long as they are well fed and treated kindly, the Aptonoth are more than happy to cooperate. In the wild, however, the Aptonoth are deeply social animals, to such an extent that you will never find one alone unless something has gone very wrong in that area. They are always found moving in herds of varying sizes, either a single family unit of 3, or large migrating herds which can number in the hundreds. Moving in herds not only offers them familiar company, which is always a bonus to them, it also offers just much better protection all around, particularly for their most vulnerable members, such as their young. Juvenile Aptonoth make very easy targets for predators, as I'm sure many of you could guess, lacking both the size and experience of their parents to stay alive, and so the safety provided by the herd is critical in keeping them alive. They have found a way to mitigate this danger though. The juveniles will grow exceptionally quickly. They will even reach adulthood within a few years of hatching. This, however, does come with a caveat. To grow that fast, you need enough food to make it happen. And also not becoming food yourself definitely helps. This is why each herd, whether large or small, is led by the largest and most experienced male. It's his job to lead the herd to areas that are relatively safe and abundant in food sources. But despite having such defenses at their disposal, the Aptonoth are by many metrics the perfect prey. They're big, they're plentiful, and most importantly for predators, they are very predictable. I'm sure many of you are aware that any predator out there runs a cost-to-benefit assessment when they hunt. Some prey are just too small to even bother expending the energy it would take to hunt them, and while some are much bigger with a lot of meat on them, they're just too dangerous to deal with. The Aptonoth, unfortunately for them, hits the sweet spot between these two extremes. They're big enough to feed even larger monsters, but they also pose no real threat to even the smaller ones out there. They are hunted by just about any predator I can name, and each one has its own way of making a meal out of an Aptonoth. We'll cover two of the most common predators they face from two opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of size. Starting off with smaller predators like the Velociprey. These swift raptors rely on causing chaos and fear among the herd to isolate a single target, which is honestly not that hard to do. An Aptonoth's first reaction to any danger they recognize is to run away. By the time they've reached adulthood, they have more than enough experience dealing with predators that they know the best way to survive is to be faster than the slowest members. However, it's not an entirely simple process, because the raptors will have to contend with the lead male. He often stays behind to draw attention away from the rest of the herd to give them a much better chance of escape. But the raptors are just way too fast for him to keep up with, and so will more often than not succeed in isolating their much weaker target. And once this is done, it's only a matter of time before the Aptonoth falls. Yes, their hide is thick enough to hold out for a while, but it can't do much against the coordinated barrage of claws and teeth from a pack of Velociprey. Then you've got apex predators like the Rathalos. They don't even need to waste time with these kinds of tactics. They'll just dive bomb right out of the sky and crush them underfoot. And once they're done, they'll just fly away with what's left of them like it's nothing. And just to highlight again, this only covers these two. Anjanath, Deviljho, Nargacuga, and so many more have their own way of hunting these creatures. And that is precisely what makes these animals so impressive to me. In a world as hostile and unforgiving as ours, where beasts fight, kill, and dominate each other for all kinds of reasons, the Aptonoth has survived through it all through sheer tenacity and cooperation, and you have got to respect that level of resilience. Okay, let's bring it back to all of you. So by now you have all cleared the guild's first set of testing, gathering and helping out both villagers and guild operatives to the point where they have actually noticed your efforts. You have successfully been in the field numerous times without hurting yourself or your partners. Congratulations, you are now going to be sent after your first real monster. And more often than not, that will be an Aptonoth. I'm certain more than a few of you are wondering how these creatures count as a hunt at all, if they're both easy to find and not threatening, which is a very fair question, and there is a reason for this. First and foremost, there is no danger in hunting these creatures, so your first real assignment thankfully won't end in a eulogy, but just as important as that, is that being a hunter is just not a job for everyone, and there's no shame in that. Heading out into the wilds on your own, tracking down these beasts and then taking their lives can just be way too much for some recruits, and it's better we find that out as soon as possible before something much more dangerous has you in its sight. But let's say you're all ready and raring to go on your first official hunting quest, whether on your own or with your party members, and you have successfully tracked down the Aptonoth. Here's what you need to do. The Aptonoth don't see humans as a threat at all, and so you can use this to your advantage. Regardless of the weapon you use, I advise aiming for its side and flanks. These areas provide easy access to multiple weak points, and if done strong enough and with enough precision, you can drop them in one well-placed strike. Once you have successfully brought one of them down, you can claim the needed materials from them and claim your bounty. The main reason above all others you will be sent out to hunt the Aptonoth is to harvest their meat. The meat of an Aptonoth is a staple across almost all regions. Whether sold by merchant stalls and just about every canteen you'll visit, it's almost guaranteed to be on the menu. It's noted not only for its delicious flavor, but for also being surprisingly nutritious. The guild often issues these quests to harvest the meat from them to satisfy demand, and for a while that's exactly what you're all going to be doing. Oh yes, I almost forgot. You will also on occasion be sent the glamorous task of harvesting their dung. Yes, you heard that right. Feel free to laugh, but the botanists swear by the stuff. It's filled with nutrients essential for plant growth and so makes a great fertilizer. We have all done it at least once, and so will all of you. Due to the fact that so many ecosystems and even communities rely on the Aptonoth to continue functioning, they were rightly declared an essential resource by the guild long ago. To help ensure that these animals remain both healthy and abundant, they also created and enforce multiple policies that prevent them from being overhunted or even poached. And believe me, the absolute last place you ever want to find yourself is on a guild knight's naughty list. Just trust me on that one, okay? Now, for any of you that are currently or will be stationed in Astera, I have a trick for all of you that I picked up in my time there. If you are sent out on a mission in the ancient forest and are having trouble tracking down your target through the maze of trees and vines, I advise locating the herd of Aptonoth wandering the area. You can use these Aptonoth to lure out your targets, and here's how you do it. If you can manage to cause enough panic amongst them, by either killing one of them or hitting them with slinger ammo, they'll begin to stampede through the forest. Their cries of panic will act as a beacon to predators and bring them running straight to you. Before any of you get excited to run out there and make some easy reward money, I will advise all of you, do not make the mistake of letting your guard down. Yes, the Aptonoth themselves may not be dangerous, but always remember this. You are never the only one hunting them at any given time. Here's a note you can take down for your journals. The Aptonoth are a gentle breed, creatures of peace and plenty. But where they roam, so too do the dangers of the wild. A hunter must always keep their wits about them. But while the Aptonoth pose no threat, the shadows that stalk them surely do. The Aptonoth may be a very simple creature to many, but they are steadfast, resilient, and reliable above all else. And for all of you, they mark your first real step to becoming a hunter. So I will tell you all, respect them and always learn from them. Now we move on to the next monster in my notes for today. And while it's still a herbivore, I assure you, don't let that fool you into thinking that it can't cause problems for you. Next up is the Apceros. Now then, this beast is certainly one that tends to leave an impression. Something that may surprise some of you is that the Apceros shares a close evolutionary line with the Aptonoth, making them essentially cousins on some level. They do share some similarities due to this, but there are far more differences between them than what seems obvious. So we'll start with the basics again. An Apceros, when fully grown, stands roughly at around 3 meters tall, can reach 8 meters or so in length, and weigh in at an impressive 6 or 8 tons. Their hide is a coarse blend of earthy brown and tan-colored scales. These are pretty tough on their own, but what sets these creatures apart from the rest is that large shell on their backs. This shell isn't just thick layers of hide or even scales, no. It's made of overlapping plates of bone. In several parts like the edges, it's upward of a foot thick, and this whole thing is fused directly to the skin on their backs. This level of density makes it impervious to most conventional attacks predators can throw at them, making this creature a walking fortress. Now, for many predators, this is enough to make them look the other way, but just in case, the Apceros is equipped with a weapon to help further dissuade them. That freaking tail. Calling this weapon a club almost feels dishonest, as it's more like a wrecking ball made of solid bone, which is then for fun further covered in spikes that are also made of bone. And here's the kicker. Even from a young age, they can swing this tail with a surprising level of speed and accuracy. This weapon's sheer mass means that any hit can be devastating to smaller predators. Raptors that get just a little bit too close are often pulverized and sent flying through the air if they're not careful. Much like their cousins, the Apceros are also fairly widespread and found in multiple regions. But in contrast to their cousins that prefer to settle in greener pastures, the Apceros instead prefer to make their homes in much more unforgiving environments. You'll find them near exclusively in scorching deserts and areas with active volcanic activity. And yet, despite choosing such hostile living conditions, the Apceros will thrive in such places and have adapted to survive on what little their environments give them. How exactly they manage to sustain themselves in such places where drinking water and vegetation are so rare, despite being this big, is still debated by people much smarter than myself. My personal theory is a combination of a drastically slowed metabolism that allows them to maximize their caloric intake, and the ability to retain water remarkably well. But I will say that until further research has been conducted, feel free to take that theory with a pinch of salt. But one thing we do know about them is that when you live in a place where each drop of water and every plant is a rare treasure, you will become very protective of what little you have. And that segues perfectly into discussing their infamously well-known tempers. Unlike their cousins that are much more laid back and will happily share their territory with other creatures, the Apceros takes a much more assertive approach to trespassers. The Apceros are highly territorial and hostile animals. They will defend any viable territory they have claimed relentlessly, even when totally outmatched. Makes sense when you realize that if you live in constant scarcity, you will fight for any scrap you can get your hands on. Because of these factors, it's been no surprise that any attempts that were made to domesticate these creatures ended in total failure. Because it turns out trying to train a walking fortress with a bad temper ends just as you would expect it to. But despite their attitude, they are social animals. Well, only with each other, and even then things aren't exactly harmonious between them. Herds of Apceros are made of multiple family units working together to protect themselves and their young. Turns out even creatures this mean have a soft side. I imagine more than a few of you might be thinking that a creature this well armed and armored, with a temper to match, surely has nothing to worry about when it comes to predators. Well, not exactly. Despite having these defenses, many predators can still bring down these animals only if they know what they're doing. And I'll explain. Let's again start with that shell. I meant it when I said that this shell is incredibly strong and even impervious to many conventional methods of attack. But this level of strength comes with a cost. The Apceros are about the same height and length of an Aptonoth, but they are several tons heavier. A lot of this extra weight comes from their denser muscle mass needed to carry all this armor, but that armor's density also makes it really heavy. So as a result, it has a substantial impact on their speed. And no matter how strong your defenses are, if you can't move, you're just a target. So for freedom of movement, there are segments across its body that are left exposed. Places like the back of their legs and their soft underbellies. This may not seem like much of a compromise with how impressive the protected areas are, but for many predators, this is all the window they need to make Apceros their prey. To prove this point, let's take a look at their natural enemies really quick. The Gen family of raptors. Looking at them, these spindly little raptors shouldn't be able to do anything to a creature this well protected. And while they lack the strength needed to break through their defenses, they make up for it with speed, coordination, and strategy. Despite the fact that the Apceros are herd animals, they can often be found alone or even away from the herd. Combo this with their lack of speed, the Apceros can't rejoin the herd in a hurry, and so must stand its ground wherever it is. A coordinated attack of well-aimed slashes and bites can bring down an Apceros in just a matter of time. But to tip the scales in the raptor's favor just that little bit more, their extended fangs can deliver a paralyzing toxin, which is strong enough to even leave an Apceros completely vulnerable. This would be manageable if it were only these smaller raptors preying upon them, but no. Just like anything else, they have to contend with the bigger beasts out there too. And when facing much bigger targets, the Apceros will stay true to their very stubborn instincts and stand their ground. Instead of going on the offensive, they play to their strengths and switch to a tactical defensive formation, which I can only describe as a living phalanx. Once in position, they will hunker down closer to the ground to reduce access to their underbellies. The next step is to raise their tails up high. Each member in this formation guards the other's weak spots and covers their blind spots doing so. For being such stubborn creatures, this level of cooperation is really an impressive sight to see. But as formidable as this formation is, even a shield wall has its limits. Something like the Tigrex doesn't need to look for openings in their defenses, they'll just make them. The gap in their power is way too vast to ignore, and they will just smash clean through their formation like a pile of dried leaves. This formation is strong, don't get me wrong, but in the face of power like this, it's completely useless. And then there are the Diablos and Monoblos, which are arguably the most dangerous creatures they will contend with. These two do not attack the Apceros to consume them, no. These attacks are about clearing competition. Given their shared diet of desert-growing vegetation, and the fact that so little of it grows at any given time, these wyverns will do what they can to secure any they find. A single charge from either of these tyrants can crash through whatever defenses the Apceros can hope to put together. These fights are neither long nor fair, and often end fatally for the Apceros as a result. So moving on to the Hunter's Guide, here's what you all need to know. As new recruits, there is one thing about the Apceros you need to know above all others. So if you remember nothing else about them, let it be this. These creatures may not shoot fireballs, or aim to devour you like many wyverns you'll be facing, but their territorial nature can be just as dangerous if you're not careful. The Apceros don't care why you're in its territory. They don't care if you're just passing through on your way to hunt something else, or even if you're in the middle of hunting a much larger beast. If they see you, they will charge immediately and without a second thought, and they are relentless to the core. So many hunters you'll meet have more than a few stories of barely surviving a bout with a much larger creature, fighting for their lives with every swing only to be blindsided by an Apceros determined to ruin their day. If you even glance at them, or take one step too close to a nesting site that's all the way over there, it doesn't matter, you've now got a 7-ton problem to deal with. So the best piece of advice I can give you to avoid this problem is that if possible, you should lure your main target to an area away from them. And if that isn't possible, I'd say scope out the area ahead of time and neutralize any you can find before taking on your real target. One less variable when hunting can be the difference between a success story and an early retirement. But at some point you will be sent out to hunt down the Apceros themselves, and so in such cases, here's what you need to know. Blunt weapons like the hammer can get the job done by breaking weaker parts like their legs, which leave them wide open for the kill. But I advise bladed or ranged weapons. Both options can find their way to their weak underside much easier, whether cutting through the flanks or slicing their underbellies. The main reason you'll be sent out to deal with them is to harvest meat from them. The meat itself isn't exactly a delicacy, but if prepared well enough, you can make cured rations from it for hunters. But the real prize is their livers. When cooked properly, these livers are not only highly nutritious, but have a rich, earthy taste to it. It's prized by most culinary experts in certain regions, so keep your eyes out for it. Another task that will be sent your way is to collect some of their eggs. And yes, that's exactly as delightful as it sounds. The job itself isn't difficult, you just need to bring an egg from point A to B and you're done. But here's the catch. Not many people are willing to risk the anger of an already ill-tempered parent, now motivated by their parental instincts. But just like before, here's a note you can all take down. The Apceros are as harsh to deal with as the deserts they call home. Slow and steadfast in their ways. While they pose little threat on their own, the lands that they inhabit certainly do. The sands themselves are ever-changing, and the beasts beneath them are ever on the move. So far, that's 2 herbivores that will present you 2 very different situations to deal with. And while the experiences of hunting them may be different, there are more similarities between these 2 than differences. So next up are a few creatures that will highlight the diversity this group of monsters contains. The first of them we'll discuss today is the Kelbi. One of the first things I'm sure many of you will have noticed is that compared to the sturdy frame of the Aptonoth and the tank-like build of the Apceros, the Kelbi certainly cuts a much more delicate frame. But they stand out in more ways than just that. The most notable being that they are one of the first mammalian herbivores officially recorded by the guild. Not the only ones by far, we will be seeing much more of them as time goes on, but they are the first entry we have in the archives. So now we start with the basics. In terms of physical prowess, they are much more modest than the previous 2 monsters we have discussed up to now by quite a lot. An adult Kelbi stands at just under 2 meters tall, specifically around 5 feet. They will reach around 2 meters in length and will rarely weigh more than around 35 kilograms, or 80 pounds if that helps. Their bodies are covered in a deep green fur broken up with beige underbellies and striped patterns along their backs. But here's something I know for a fact not many of you will know about. Older records and field journals depict the Kelbi having what seem to be green scale plates instead of fur. Whether these depict their ancestors from a long time once past, or a regional subspecies whose numbers have dwindled over time is still up for debate. But for any of you who might say this is just a mistake, I counter with this. This description appears far too often to be written off as just a mistake. And until we either have a living specimen or fossilized remains, we're not going to know for certain. One trait, however, that has persisted across the records of old and those of today is their clear sexual dimorphism. Male Kelbi sport a set of intricately branching horns. Their complexity varies from region to region, but their use remains the same. These horns are used to display sexual maturity to the females and even fight off rival males during the mating seasons. In contrast, the female horns are much shorter and blunted. A secondary trait we've noticed is that the ears tend to droop downwards where male ears point upwards. These are very simple differences, I will say, but much like the Aptonoth, once you know what you're looking for, you can't mistake them. Now, in terms of where you can find them, this is where the Kelbi truly stand out, and it's actually in their favor this time. Unlike the more specialized herbivores we've covered up to now, the Kelbi can be found in almost every major biome across nearly every region. Or some of the more extreme locales like frozen tundras or molten lava fields. Everywhere else, fair game. Deserts, forests, grasslands, marshes, they do well in all of them. Because of this quite frankly unprecedented level of success, the guild has classified them as a generalist species. This is simply defined as a species that can thrive in a wide variety of environments and utilize the variety of resources available to them. This level of adaptability is one of the key factors to their survival and success as a species. Despite how skittish they are around potential threats, they are surprisingly comfortable around humans. They don't see us as a threat in any way. The reason why is unclear, but it has thankfully made researching them a lot easier. But despite being found in so many places, that doesn't mean you're going to see a lot of them in any one place. Here's what I mean. These animals only travel in small groups, usually no more than 5 individuals. This isn't due to some kind of hierarchy in their groups, no. It's about keeping attention away from them. The term safety in numbers doesn't really apply to them considering the fact they are less than a fraction of the size of other herbivores out there, so gathering in numbers doesn't really work for them. Speaking of predators, however, it shouldn't come as a shock that if they have found a way to bring down something like the Apceros, then the Kelbi should just be easy pickings. And that would be a correct assumption, but that also emphasizes the fact that what few defenses they do possess matter all the more. These animals specialize in avoiding conflict rather than holding their own against predators, and so have developed tools to help with this strategy. The first being their green fur. This coloration allows them to blend into vegetation of dense forests or even tall grasses. This camouflage is what they depend on before predators actually notice them. This isn't foolproof though, as many predators like the Nargacuga, for example, have senses that are just far too keen for this to fool them. This is where their keen sense of hearing comes into play. They are capable of hearing any unfamiliar sounds within an estimated radius of 300 to 400 yards. And if they do hear something, they run. And they run fast. Kelbi are built very lightly and are very agile as a result. Their bodies are streamlined and their hind legs allow them to bound across various terrains with surprising speed. But if any one of these defenses fail them at all, even smaller predators like the raptors can make an easy meal out of them. Because of this, any ventures made to domesticate these animals were shot down on arrival. If you're wondering why, let's go through the reasons why it's a bad idea. Looking at it simply economically, it's a really hard sell. It's just not as profitable when compared to the numbers even a single Aptonoth can yield. A fully grown Aptonoth can weigh as much as 137 Kelbi. Yes, 137 of them. So even just thinking of meat productions, those numbers speak for themselves. Another reason is that one Aptonoth kept in a village is very manageable, but keeping that many Kelbi in one localized area may as well be an invitation to dinner for every predator within miles of that settlement. Hence why this venture is just not worth pursuing, but if any of you want to drop this class and become a Kelbi farmer, feel free and please let me know how that goes. Now, as if there wasn't already enough, there is another factor that makes the Kelbi unique compared to others. And that is, unlike the rest, you will never be sent out to harvest them for their meat. Don't get me wrong, the meat of a Kelbi is serviceable, and if you're running low on rations on a job, I do recommend it. But any quest involving the Kelbi is focused on one thing and one thing only: their horns. These horns are so much more than many would assume them to be by just looking at them, and I don't really blame you because I thought the same at first. But these horns are a key ingredient in crafting high-grade medicinal items. When ground into a fine powder, they are used to brew some of the most potent restorative potions, capable of instantly restoring your strength and stamina. So this alone makes them very important for keeping both us and the villagers in good health. Fortunately for everyone involved, harvesting these horns is a very simple process. Since the Kelbi don't see us as a threat at all, you can walk right up to them. With one well-placed strike or well-aimed shot, you can break them clean off. Blunt weapons like the hammer do leave them unconscious long enough for you to carve them off. And the best part is, these horns will grow back in time, making it a very sustainable resource. But it would be very, very remiss of me if I were to neglect talking about one of the more surprising utilities these horns possess. If you bring a few of these horns to the blacksmith, you can get yourself the Kelbi Sting Shot. This weapon is very well known to many experienced hunters, and for good reason. It functions identically to the bow, but with one key difference. Instead of firing arrows, it instead fires small pellets made of steel. It's capable of firing 5 of these pellets at once, and each one of them can be coated in various substances to enhance their offensive power. At one point, they were even capable of being coated in the explosive slime that the Brachydios will use in combat. Moving on from that, because I could go on about that weapon for a while, so I'll leave you all to explore more about it in your own time. Here's a note from my own journal that you can all take down. The Kelbi are as delicate as the leaves they feed upon, fleet-footed and ever alert. They are a reminder that in the heart of the forest, not all strength is found in muscle and might. Sometimes it lies in the ability to vanish as if one with the wind. With that, we will turn our attention to the last entry in my notes for today. A beast that has earned a reputation not for power or speed, but tenacity and an unshakable appetite. The foraging experts themselves, the Mosswine. The Mosswine certainly embodies the resilience and sturdiness of the larger herbivores out there. It's only lacking their size. Even so, these sturdy little creatures have managed to successfully carve out a niche for themselves, and they have done it very well. So again, starting with the basics. An average Mosswine stands at just under a meter tall, reaches about 2 meters in length, and weighs around 200 to 260 pounds. Small? Absolutely, but they are built like barrels with legs. But I should probably mention that there have been more than a few reports of some individuals growing as large as an Aptonoth. They were found in the containment area located in Astera, and I can confirm these reports are not exaggerating at all. I don't have a clue whether these Mosswine were genuine freaks of nature or some kind of experiment that went wrong at the guild, but I'll leave that conclusion to you. Getting back to the normal Mosswine, these creatures get their names from what sets them apart. Their backs are covered in thick layers of moss and various forms of plant life. Whether this is due to poor personal hygiene, a unique feature of their biology, or a yet unknown symbiotic relationship is still up for debate. Then there's another hard-to-miss feature about them, and that's the large crown of bone at the center of their heads. While it can be used to headbutt anything they don't like, its main purpose seems to be used as a foraging tool, moving large debris in search of food and fungi. Much like the other herbivores, the Mosswine is very selective about where it chooses to settle. They are mainly found in temperate regions where vegetation is plentiful, the trees offer plenty of shade, and have easy access to water. Forested areas where they can dig and graze are also ideal for them. That being said, there have been multiple sightings of Mosswine wandering through the Rotten Vale of all places. Why they would choose such a hostile and toxic environment is anyone's guess. Maybe they're seeking new food sources, they're too stubborn to leave, or they just got lost. I've seen them there with my own eyes, and yet I still can't make sense of it, so it's anyone's guess. If the Aptonoth are docile, the Apceros is aggressive, and the Kelbi are passive creatures, the Mosswine can only be described as single-minded. I say this with no exaggeration at all. The Mosswine only cares about one thing, and that's food. They will spend every available second they have with their noses to the ground sniffing out any delicacies hidden in the soil. And they will disregard anything else that is not this task. Unless you harm them, they will completely ignore you're even there and continue sniffing out mushrooms and truffles. Whether this is just blissful ignorance or a total disregard for the danger around them is unclear, but no one can deny it seems to work for them. If you interrupt them in this process, they will turn their attention towards you. Using that bone growth on their heads, they will charge you once or twice in an attempt to scare you off. But don't worry, it's more bark than bite, and it's more of an insult than an injury. This single-minded focus on foraging has left the Mosswine with little to no social structure, at least that we know of. You might occasionally see a pair of Mosswine moving together, but whether they're mates, siblings, or just two Mosswine roaming the same area is honestly unclear. Now this is where things just get truly baffling to me. On paper, the Mosswine are by every metric the perfect prey. They're slow, they have no armor, they're not strong, and they have no speed to speak of, and yet, they persist. So how in the name of the Sapphire Star have they not gone extinct by now? The reasons are multiple, so here we go. Their choice of territory plays a huge role in their survival. The forests that they inhabit provide both tall trees and dense foliage to protect them. Their moss-covered backs make them blend into the undergrowth very well. The trees themselves also stop airborne predators from swooping down and grabbing them right off the ground. Other predators like the Jaguars or even Velociprey can hunt down these animals with no effort, and larger predators can do it without so much as a thought. But here's the twist, everyone. They rarely even bother. Mosswine fly so low under the radar that many predators don't even notice them wandering the area. And the energy it would take to hunt them is just not worth it when there's much larger and much more tantalizing prey around. We live in a world with things like this, and that just walking around, and in spite of this, The Mosswine populations remain abundant. I can't decide whether it's a testament to their levels of tenacity, a high breeding rate, or their abilities to adapt, or just proof that sometimes nature just plays favorites. Honestly, I have no idea. So again, we return to the Hunter's Guide. Going forward, you will rarely be sent an official quest involving Mosswine as a target. So when you do, I can almost guarantee that it's coming from the chefs. This is because the meat of a Mosswine is a true delicacy to have. Their eclectic diet of fruits, mushrooms, roots, and truffles seems to infuse their meat with a depth of flavor that is near impossible to replicate. But due to it being so highly sought after, these creatures are only harvested for special occasions within the guild. Also, for any of you who decided to remain gatherers in the first wave of testing, I have a tip for you to make your work a lot easier. If you're out looking for mushrooms but you need to locate high value ones, I advise following a Mosswine. These creatures are quite literally built to find such things, and their skills are second to none. Following them around and waiting until they bolt to a certain direction, where they stop, that's where you'll find the good stuff buried in the ground. And yet again, here's another note for your journals, everyone. In the shadowed depths of the forest, the Mosswine teaches us that survival does not always rely on speed or strength, but on blending in, staying quiet, and knowing where to find the hidden treasures of the earth. The herbivores may not be the most glamorous subject we will be studying in this class. They may not wield devastating power, wield the elements as they see fit, or are the subjects of legends we grew up hearing. But I hope I have made at least one thing very clear to you all. Each of these creatures play a crucial role in keeping and maintaining balance in the ecosystems we all rely on. Their simplicity is very deceptive, but their importance couldn't be any more clear. They deserve our respect and have earned it many times over. And with that, it brings today's lesson officially to a close. Thank you all for sticking with me all the way to the very end. I truly mean that. I know you all have your reasons for being here, whether it's just curiosity or taking your first step to becoming a hunter fit for the legends. I hope you all learned something here today. Maybe even a deeper level of appreciation for the creatures often so disregarded by many. But don't worry. We've only just begun our long journeys together. The guild has already sent me a task to prepare for our next class together. Looks like we're going to be examining the original trio of raptors. And until then, everyone, stay sharp, stay curious, and as always, good hunting.